listeners, welcome to this episode of Chasing the Vision. I'm excited for this one because we have a guest. It's very fun when we have guests here. Not that I don't enjoy talking to Tim and JT because I do, but since we are into like halfway through season two, we decided to bring a guest in for a little bit of a spicy conversation today, maybe on what it's like to work with a spouse, what that kind of looks like, succession planning, kind of separation of church and state, if you will, between personal and business, how you make all of that work. And so we have Katie Smith with PHC Restoration joining us today. She is a second generation restorer, and she and her husband run PHC Restoration in North Carolina. So I just kind of did half of your intro, Katie. I apologize, but I'm going to toss it over to you to introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'm worried that you're advertising this as working with spouses and it's a spicy episode. So I'm concerned. I'm not
We need
prepared for
listeners.
this. I might be blushing. So, well, hello, everyone. I am the owner of PHC Restoration, second generation owner. So we started talking about family businesses, and Tim and I were running through some ideas. And I know we talk about working with your parents and second generation all the time, but I was like, I don't think people really talk about working with your spouse enough, your husband, wife, your partner, whoever. So my husband and I both joined this business 20 years ago. We also got married 20 years ago. Our anniversary is next week. And so over the years, we've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. And I'll share those things with you today. But we both came from other industries. Josh was a career firefighter and left that job behind to come work with us. And I was working at a radio station before coming here and didn't want to really move around the country from market to market. And I mean, who listens to radio anymore now? So kind of glad I did that. But we both left something completely different behind to come here and join the family business and take it to the next level and the next generation. So we've learned a lot on the way.
Beautiful. Okay, so Tim and JT, from your seats, what do family businesses usually look like? I think, Tim, you're going to take it from more the consultant view, and you work with a lot of family businesses. And then JT, I'm curious your take kind of from the growth succession planning, kind of what that looks like. So, Tim, you take it away first.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And Katie, I appreciate you joining us today. When I think about kind of leveling up, what we're doing here at the podcast, and you and I did spend a little bit of time talking about family in the business and spouses in the business. And kudos to you and Josh for all that you've been able to accomplish, especially the anniversary side of things, because I do think that you guys can provide a good example, great example for couples that work in business together and can be successful at it. So. Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
Michelle, yeah, typically what we see, at least from the consulting lens, when our clients come to us is one spouse has got a background in operations or sales and marketing or some, functional area in the business. They're acting as the president, the founder, the owner of the organization, and another spouse is supporting them as the loyal partner. Oftentimes that's in a bookkeeping role or a business development role, something more complementary to what the other person does not do. So those are your traditional type of structures, I think, that what we see. Rarely do we see, unfortunately, rarely do we see 50-50 partnerships come in where both spouses, I think, are equal equity shareholders in the business. A lot of times it's treated that way, but oftentimes it's not. So I think we're going to talk about, some successes and maybe some failures on what that looked like on the spousal side. But yeah, that's your typical picture of what we see.
JT, what do you see from your lens, especially when couples are coming in and, they may not be ready to sell or move on now, but I think when
Mhm.
it's a couple, it probably takes some maybe different kind of succession planning, some different looking at the future, maybe looking at it sooner than later. So what do you see from your seat?
Well, first, thank you, Katie, for joining us. I think your perspective here is going to be fantastic. Um, I'll stereotype a little bit. Not that I want to, but mostly what I see when people come to me is husband-wife teams or partnerships. And he typically is all things operations and productions and everything out in the field, et cetera. And oftentimes she is the queen of the office, all things money, all things collections, receivables, marketing, HR, those sorts of things. And that's more typical than not. And so when we talk about succession planning, I need to think about replacement. and it's starting at 100,000 feet. When I talk about replacement, I need to think about a buyer coming in. And what does it mean for a buyer to replace decades of institutional knowledge from a husband-wife team that between the two of them, they have all the answers they have had for decades. And so that can be dicey. And we're going to talk about that today. And so, the first thing that comes to mind is replacement and what it means and where the risks are when we try to do that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Katie, let's start kind of at the beginning. I think, there are a lot of spouses out there that decide, oh, we're going to buy a franchise or, oh, we're going to start a business. Or maybe one spouse decides that they're going to be in restoration, the other one's still outside. So at what point did you two decide, all right, this is the family business, we're second generation here, you guys are coming in and working in it together?
Look, I had to really reflect back on this because when it was all happening, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is such a, great opportunity to take this legacy and build it. I didn't think I was going to stay here forever. I never once as a child thought I would find myself working here. Never. But looking back, I know like God's timing is so perfect on all this. And I don't think anything ever could have developed me as a human being better than the restoration industry has. It's like, it's just trial by fire. And thank God I found great people like Tim and Violand to really help us figure out how to do what we're doing. But I just know, I think also my dad just knew, he saw something in me and knew I could do this. And it had never crossed my mind. So even when I didn't think I could do it, he knew I could. So I give him a lot of credit for that. But it's now I see it as just taking, a legacy that was built, a really strong foundation of 40 years, and then turning that into something new and refreshed and continuing to build on it so that it's here if needed or wanted for a third generation. But really, we just see it as like the business is this vehicle that we use to build the life that we want and to create a legacy of intention and meaning and impact. And it just allows us to really have the freedom to do meaningful work. But if you would have asked me 20 years if that's what I was thinking going into it, absolutely not. I mean, it took me a solid 10 years before I really found my footing in this industry and really got into my groove and got things where I want them. And honestly, I would not have wanted to do that without my husband being here with me because it was so freaking hard. Like it's just, I mean, it would have been easier to start from scratch and build
Mhm.
from the ground up, I think. When you think about taking like habits that have been built over 30 plus years and breaking some of those habits and building new structures. So when you go through something really, really difficult like a generational leadership change, I was so glad to have him there with me every step of the way. And it really it helped us go through something difficult together and then find out what we're made of. So for that, I think it really helped us build a strong foundation with each other.
And give the people listening a little glimpse at the roles that you and Josh play in the business. You don't have to get super specific if you don't want to, but how do you kind of separate yourselves and stay in your own lanes without too much maybe overlap? Or how do you overlap?
Yeah. No. And Tim would tell you when he first met us, there was no roles, lanes, whatever. It was a little chaotic.
One big road.
One big road, few
We were
accidents here
zigzagging
and
all
there.
over the place.
Yeah.
But we do have lanes, and we do run on EOS now. And so I would be an integrator. I sit in like a GM position. Josh is the technical director here, so he loves to be involved with like a lot of our, especially our restoration mitigation contents teams, but doesn't necessarily want to manage people. He loves being a technical problem solver. He loves like the quick in and out of the mitigation world. He loves commercial large loss. And so part of our work has been finding like, what do you love to do? And let's get you doing that. He is our general contractor as well. So he does hold that and he's a resource for a lot of our reconstruction PMs as well. And we'll manage some projects if he needs to, but he doesn't want to. So we've been working over the years to kind of fine tune what that looks like. So he's a great trusted resource. I am passionate about culture and people and building a great business, especially in a small town where we're located. I want to be a destination workplace in a small rural community. That's really important to me. So over time, I found out this is what God built me to do, and this is what I'm going to do with all my heart. So we found ways to be able to find what we love doing and then develop those lanes and then hire other people who do things well that we don't do well and really complement us and build a strong team.
I love it. Okay, so Tim and JT, I'm going to ask you for a little bit of like commentary here. So JT, I'll toss it to you first, but I'm curious how you approach conversations with couples that come to you saying, "I want evaluation," or "Oh, we're going down the road, we're getting some fender benders here." I don't know. How do you guide people along, and how can that change kind of the success and trajectory of a company if the couples can figure out appropriate, accurate, good lanes to be in? JT, go ahead.
Well, to answer that accurately and properly, I need about 90 minutes. So, but
Yeah.
I'll really try to keep this short. I found early on I have to meet people where they're at. And very quickly, I realized, and I can boil it down within minutes now, what kind of relationship a husband wife team has when they call me. Because oftentimes, regardless of legal ownership, there can be a hierarchy with the two of them involved. And so I have to navigate that. And there can be challenges, there can be egos, there can be issues with the marriage, there can be a lot of different things to navigate. And so I meet them wherever they want to start, is where I start. And how I do that, it really is with data. And sometimes what I'm hearing is not actually the truth. You know, people will say things that don't align with what the numbers are telling me. So I get to help navigate that. And sometimes you have to put the velvet gloves on over the boxing gloves, to deliver news. You can tell a lot by body language. I love it when I'm visiting with a husband wife team, and I'll ask a question, and he will just look at her like, you go first. And there are other times, and that is a great sign of respect for
Mhm.
me. And I know that's something really little, as opposed to a lot of them out there who will just answer for him and for her and never even allow her to speak sometimes. And that's really disappointing. And so it can be a vast range of possibilities in there. Meeting them where they're at, helping boil a conversation down to really what's important, and then trying to get everybody on the same page. Sometimes one partner's ready to retire and the other one's not, and they can't figure out how to move forward, and it can create a lot of problems. I think I've done 7 or 8 divorce sales now over the last 15 years, and nobody wins. They should have called Tim years before they called me to help work this out. So it's a very convoluted answer, Michelle, and it could go a lot of different directions. Meet people where they're at, try to solve it, and make the most of the situation.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, go ahead. What's your
I
take
want
on
to
it?
kind of roll. I want to roll some of what Katie said and JT together. And look, there's no one right answer, to everything, to making it a perfect scenario. But, Katie, you bring up a good point in that the culture and the people, regardless of how good the spouses are, we rarely see significant business growth if the business is still dependent on the two spouses.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a team and it takes employees. So coming at it from, kind of through that lens, having clearly defined lanes for the roles and responsibilities that are in alignment with where they're at, JT, and their strengths and their weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
allowing them to play in the areas where they are strong and they can complement what the business represents, makes it so much easier for the employees to get on board with everything. When you've got one big lane like we talked about, and one spouse is running around giving directions and another spouse is going around, you always have that opportunity for conflict with what's being communicated, and there's nothing worse for an employee than to be given two different directions on the same thing. So keeping everybody moving, in the same direction while staying in their lanes is probably the key to what I would see would be successful.
Katie, do you have any advice before we kind of move on to the next section on keeping things, staying in your lane? I'm sure that every once in a while things come up where it's like, oh, we're getting a little
Well,
closer. We need to merge for a minute. So,
it's
any
no
advice?
different than parents. If one
Yeah.
kid doesn't get what they want, they might, with one parent, they may go to the next. But you also have to be very careful because it is seen as a sign of disrespect if you start getting in someone else's lane. And if someone comes to you with a question that you should not be answering, you can say, "I'm sorry, I'm not the one for that." But to really I think a tool like an accountability chart really helps everybody understand, and then even like your onboarding process really getting everybody to understand on day one, like here's who you report to, here's who handles these kinds of things, and showing them the structure of the organization. I think that really helps. And then having, like a manager handoff And then on this topic, the other thing I just want to say, like when I was much younger, like I had some insecurity because every time you would go to an industry event, people just assumed that I was the bookkeeper. And I'm like, no, I'm
Mhm.
not. So please stop thinking that. And so I think if there's one thing that, could just bring awareness to is that we're all built differently. And if you're the type of person who has that discipline and you love strategy, you love structure, and like maybe you like being in an office environment more, then maybe you should be in a different role than the person who thrives in the chaos of restoration and loves be doing training with people and making sure that the quality is exactly where it needs to be. So just don't assume because you see a spouse that she's there to sit by the pool at the convention all week because she's traveling with her husband, because that's another thing too. But really understand that leadership looks very different in 2025 than it did in 1995.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also different lanes to get involved in, kind of like because you were on the RIA board and involved with the university, Josh gets involved in standards and education and those kind of
Yeah.
things. So there is a way for everybody to serve kind of in their own lane if you're looking for
Yes,
something to get involved in. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to finances a little bit here, which this is going to be an interesting part of the conversation, I think. So in any marriage, I think there's usually like a free spirit or a spender, and then somebody who's the saver and maybe a little bit more cautious. And when you're running a business together, then there's extra money kind of thrown in. So Katie, how do you kind of make sure that financially you guys are on the same page and you're preserving money in the business, you know what's coming home, you're being good stewards of the money within the business?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I didn't even think about this when I was preparing, but having a really great CPA, someone to help you out with your tax strategy is really important, that you meet with them regularly. That's a good nugget here. But I will share with you that over the years, we have not always been as disciplined as we are. And many years ago, we were reckless with our finances. And what I found is that your business finances and your personal finances, they will mirror each other. And so whatever your money mindset is, you bring it into your business. It is the same one that you have at home. And when you are reckless, you have no peace and you have no freedom. You have no options. You have no opportunity because you're a slave to debt. So now we live a debt-free lifestyle, and we try to mirror that as at work as much as we can. And Michelle, you and I talk about this a lot. There's a lot of thoughts that there's a lot of pressure that there is right now, just being a human in this day and age. But you feel a lot of pressure as a business owner and a successful business owner when your business is rocking and rolling and growing and you've got something good going on and you're profitable. You feel the shoulds start creeping in, like, well, I should be able to go out and buy this luxury SUV, and I should drive this, and I should have a house like this, and I should have a vacation home, and I should have a boat. But then I keep like, I keep thinking like, no, that's not what's most important. Like, I'm not going to keep working to pay for things that I don't have time to use. So like, this is a constant struggle in my life. And I will say also what I have found to be impactful is joining a peer group. And I know Viola and you run peer groups. There's others in the industry as well. It really helps to stack your numbers up against someone else. And I would have not have done that years ago because I would have been embarrassed. And so now it's almost like this competitive advantage. And just thinking about building a strong reserve base and being ready for anything like these black swan events like COVID, and providing stability for your people, like that's what matters. And then the impact that you make in your community is far and above more important than the toys that you have. And so like I have to like there are certain situations that I'm in and I start comparing myself to other people thinking I should be doing this differently. And so I have a really silly game that I play. It's like my reserves game. I like cars too. I like cars a lot, but I also like to be financially stable and debt free. So those are two competing priorities in my life. And so I have this game of like, man, I really love that car, but then I think I could buy X number of those in cash with reserves. I keep working, right? Keep being disciplined. And so it just kind of it's always an internal struggle that I have. But then I just know like when you do the right things with money and you do good things with your money, you will always have plenty of money. And that's like just this totally new mindset that I had to adopt because I was tired of being broke. So another thing that I think is important is like the financial transparency that you have in your business with your team. Everybody needs to know how well you're performing. And whenever you start opening up, the financial performance to your people, it brings a whole new level of accountability to your performance and how you manage your money. And like on the first day of your onboarding here at this company, you see our 90-day revenue goals, you see our profit goals. Then I'm telling you what we're doing with that profit so that you don't have the mindset of, well, that's just going in Katie's pocket. So they understand that my pocket is not PHC's pocket. They're totally different things. This business is a living, breathing organization. It has its own finances, right? I don't live off the business. We don't live off the business. And a big theme in my life, I don't like things to be messy. So I don't want my books to be messy. I don't want my reporting to be messy. I want to clearly see how well we are performing without having to sort through all these adjustments from where we're taking money out of the business and bleeding it dry. So the financial health of the business to me is a huge priority. And that kind of just trickles over into our personal life. I think they're just interwoven, but you have to have the same values when it comes to money management in life and in business.
And so, okay, well, Tim, I'm going to toss it to you then to take this instead of tossing it to Katie and putting her in the fire.
I'm
What do you
waiting for
do?
it.
Well, because Katie was saying you have to be similarly minded with how you're managing your finances. But I'm guessing that you see couples come in who are not. One is the free spirit, one is the spender, and that is probably a conflict in how the business money is being managed, and maybe they are living off of the business directly, like Katie was saying, versus being supported by. So how do you kind of steer people in a healthy financial direction? We could do multiple episodes on this. We've talked about financial cleanliness a lot, but go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple things going on there. One, if there is competing philosophies, so I'm not talking about Katie, you talked about priorities, which is a good thing, but philosophies, right? If
Yeah.
one spouse has a separate philosophy than another on how to manage money, that's a recipe for disaster. If both of them are working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason I say that is not that one is right or one is wrong, depending on what they are. But again, get back to the staff. Your staff is going to emulate the behavior and those
Yep.
philosophies that you exhibit in the business, whether you're transparent or not. I mean, they can see the books or they can just look in the parking lot. They're going to formulate whatever opinion that they want, and if they get the impression that you're bleeding the company dry for your own benefit, um, and they're driving the same 10-year-old vehicle that's got 300,000 miles on it. That doesn't do anybody any good. And JT, you'll probably attest to that. You can't get much of a quality of an assets evaluation if the owner's the one driving all the nice vehicles. But I do want to come back to the whole priority thing that Katie talked about, and it maybe interject my own personal philosophy here, but I've always, both personally and professionally, operating for what I call a $0 budget. So at the beginning of the year, you're going to plan for what you anticipate are going to be your earnings for that year, and then set the priorities for where they're going. Obviously, expenses are number one priority, but beyond that, assuming we make the profit that we're going to, how much of that is going to be reinvested in the organization? How much of that is going to be used to pay down your debt servicing? How much of that is going to be used then in bonuses or rewards for your staff, or brand revitalization, or pick a thing, right? But at the end of the day, the equation should always be zero. And Katie, to your point about the shoulds, all right. Chuck has this term he calls going Hollywood with a lot of our clients that do become successful. You feel that sense of entitlement. I did work hard. I did, sacrifice, and I gave up things for years. It's time that I repay myself. There's a time and a place for that, and it's different for everybody. But back to my budgeting side of things, plan for it.
Yeah.
Nobody says you don't deserve a reward, and especially spouses together should, share in that reward, but plan for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think planning what you want your life to look like when you're ready to retire and when you want to retire. And one of the things that we've done recently is timelining our goals, starting at where we are right now and where we think we might be like when we're, let's say 80, right? And then all the events that will happen in our lives from now until then. And that might just be like when our child starts driving, when he goes to college, when we think we're going to retire and all that. And then thinking like, how much money do we need for this? And like, what are we not anticipating? What are the unknowns here? And really long range thinking. I think that that's really important. I don't think enough humans think about that. And, I think you got to educate yourself and you got to feed really good information into your mind. So instead of scrolling on social media looking at what influencers are driving and wearing and where they're traveling, like giving your brain good nourishing food and thinking about books like The Millionaire Next Door. I listened to that book more than once. Let's just put it that way, because sometimes I need it to bring me down to earth because the lifestyle creep, it is real, and there's a pressure there. And Tim, you're right. You can't like be completely off base with how people live when you're responsible for others. So there's so many good resources out there. But you got to be real careful about what you put into your brain.
Perfect. Okay, so JT, from your lane, talk about what it looks like, as people are doing succession planning. And I know some businesses you value them, every few years just so that they know where they're at. But how important is kind of this financial cleanliness and especially separating maybe like family money from the business finances, those kind of things? How important is all of that to the long-term vision for the business? Kind of like Katie was talking about, whether it's, 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Well, I think a clean separation is vital. And I also think Katie is borderline a PhD masterclass there in separation. So nice work, Katie, on the answer. When it comes to clean financials, and you're right, we've talked about it, it's got to be there. And Michelle and Tim, you've heard this. I've seen private educations, I've seen BMW racing teams, I've seen helicopters, boats, you name it, I've seen it expense through the business. And Katie, I can see your eyebrows go up. I mean, I imagine you have a very clean set of books. Not every business is that way. And I've had people, when I go through evaluation analysis, I've had people say, I can't find all the receipts that I expense. They bury things so deep. Well, if you can't find them for me or for yourself, how are you going to find them for an eventual buyer? At that point, you're hurting the value. So Katie is correct. 100%, it's a mindset on keeping it clean. Yes, there might be a little more paid in taxes, but the peace of mind, Katie, you mentioned peace. It's vital. It's vital knowing where the dollars are at instead of hoping where they're at. Quick example on the financial piece that turned out to be a big backfire. Katie, I'll intertwine your love for cars and Tim, your balance of lifestyle comment. I valued a company 6 or 7 years ago, big warehouse down in Southern California. And when I flew in to meet the owner, one of the very first things he did is bring me out to this warehouse and show me his Ferrari sitting there. It was right next to the cleaning room. And now imagine my thought. He had 150 employees. Imagine what an employee would think when they walk in there and see the owner's Ferrari and they're making $18 an hour, let's say. What a demotivator this must have been. And we had a couple conversations about that. This owner didn't realize that there was even a problem, nor would ever acknowledge that. But I guarantee you there was a problem there. I don't think you use your business warehouse to store a personal Ferrari. So I think that can backfire pretty easy. So my rule is always the cleaner, the better.
Yeah. And those things don't bring you happiness at the end of the day. They eventually get old. But I will, because JT's probably not going to do this, I'm going to say that I have worked with him. And I started this process with him just to do evaluation when we started seeing a lot of consolidation in our market. I saw a lot of big groups coming with their eyes on all of us. And I wanted to know, like, if I'm going to be competing with some of these national brands, I want to know what I'm up against. I want to know what our worth is, and I want to know everything we need to do to be able to build it and to be strong and to be resilient. And so that's how we used our valuation process with JT. And we didn't have to really go through much really to find out everything. But I just said, man, I can't imagine what due diligence is like. So, I mean, that really heightened my awareness of like being super clean with everything personal and business. But highly recommend that process to anyone, and not just for the numbers component, but the questions, the open-ended questions that he asked you to really be thinking about your why. That's a really great process for any business owner to go through.
Perfect. Okay, before we move on, I do want to ask one kind of follow up here, and it can be to any of you because we've talked about, putting parameters around what you do spend on and being careful, but there is a time to also reward yourself or to do something or to take a draw or whatever that may be. So, any of you can chime in on this, but what parameters do you put around that? Like, how do you know when it's like, okay, it's okay to take a draw, or it's okay to take this trip, or it's okay to do something or take a reward? How do you know?
I'll go because did one yesterday, and we are actually building another business right now. We're building a self-storage facility, and so there are some things that we're doing to invest in a business other than just this business because we don't want everything in our
Mhm.
personal finance to hinge on the value of this one company. When all of your eggs are in one basket, that's not a good feeling. So and then we're going on a big trip for our 20th anniversary. And we've been planning for this for like 9 months and saving for it. So, putting it away and earmarking it just for that, I will still struggle to spend it, but I know it's there just for that. And then also, here's the thing. It's not about a revenue number, but I know a lot of people have big goals. And there are times where I will say, all right, if I'm going to do this, I will reward myself with this and not until I reach that. And so there are some splurges that I've done in my life, but they were very meaningful. Some of them are rooted in my dad and I, and some of the milestones that we reached together, and some of it's just things, personal changes that I've made in my life and milestones with that. So I do, I'm not going to say like I'm living this like crazy monk type life here, but I do try to tie meaning with something, and I try to think about who will get this from me when I am older, and what is the story that goes along with that? Because I'm sentimental like that, but it's not like, I try not to be excessive, I guess.
Yeah, Michelle, I don't think you were looking for specific numbers or percentages.
No.
So, to just expand on what Katie was saying, the goals and the priorities are the big thing.
Mhm.
Uh, if you've reached, like Katie said, you set a milestone, you set a goal for yourself, and then you plan based on the priorities that you have, that so much of that is going to be used as a reward or an earning. Let's use the term earnings for a
Yeah.
moment here. We've earned that. Okay, it's not a reward, it's earned based on the things that we've accomplished professionally in our life. And that can be as small as, maybe a new car, or something as large as, a vacation home or piece of real estate, or what have you. It should all be relative to whatever it is, size business you're in, or personal financial position for that matter. Um,
Yeah, I think you should also have a threshold of like, don't go below this number, of knowing that reserve number that you never want to creep under personally and with your business. To me, that's really important.
Yep, for sure. Okay.
I'm nodding because when I talk to business owners and we start the true exit after sometimes years of planning, I'll say, "What is it that you need? What is it when you meet with your estate planner, your financial advisor, wealth advisor, et cetera? What is it that you need?" And some will say, "Oh, I don't know, 50, $60,000 a year. I'm fine. Everything's paid for. We've got other income streams. We're good." And that's wonderful to hear. And sometimes I get this answer, which I got last year after selling a business north of 20 million. He said, "I need $925,000 a year." And I said, my question was, "Well, what you needed annually?" And he said, "Well, that's what I need." And I said, "Really?" And this individual traveled all over the world with his hobby, and he was not going to give that up. And we were able to accomplish that for him, but he knew very specifically what he needed to accomplish this hobby, $925,000 a year. And so any range of possibilities, and Katie, you've used the word twice, I think, with intentional and purposeful, as long as it's done with intent and with purpose, there isn't a right or wrong answer. I mean, we all can acknowledge there's a massive difference between wants and needs,
Yeah.
and we can all measure that differently. It's like when somebody calls me out of the blue, "Tim, you get this as well. Hey, what should my GP be on this kind of business?" Like, well, line up 10 CPAs on that business. I'll give you 10 different GPs based on what they put above and
Hmm.
below the line. So I can give you a bell curve kind of answer, but it isn't right or wrong. As long as it's intentional, then it should be good.
That sounds like quite a hobby. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about guardrails, putting guardrails around your marriage, especially protecting your marriage. She laughs already. All right. So
Lanes, guardrails, like
I know. I'm keeping with the analogy. It's working out really well. No fender benders.
Ferraris.
We don't want any fender benders or crashes in our marriages here. So what kind of guardrails do you have around kind of your and Josh's marriage to protect the marriage even above the business?
Yeah, so I think, your business is only going to be as healthy as your marriage is, and it doesn't happen by accident. Like nothing great happens by accident. It takes a lot of purpose, intention, prioritization, and it's got to be really important to you. And the people in your business will know when something's off. And so they rely on you to do the work to keep your relationship stable because that means job stability for them. And just like your business needs a mission, it needs values, it needs strategy, it needs goals. So does your life, and so does your marriage. You need to know what you're building together and what's most important to you and what you value together. And honestly, and we find, and I don't want anybody to think we've got it all figured out. We don't. And I think sometimes like you have ups and downs, highs and lows. And when it gets to one of those ups and downs, highs and lows moment, is because you've let the business become like the third wheel in your relationship. And it feels like all you do, like it just consumes you. And it happens so fast. And you have to like, check each other and be like, wait a minute, like what, what's going on here? So that happens to us. And we have to really be intentional about, sometimes it's trying to step out of the office a little bit earlier. And then what do we do with that time? We don't then get on our laptop and then go do more stuff at home, but it might be working out together, just going for a walk together. But one thing I can tell you is that you need to put your phone down. And that's not, just two business owners working together. I think that's every marriage right now. We laugh a lot of times. We're in a restaurant and there can be, a couple beside us and both of them are on the phones and we laugh
Mhm.
because we're the people that own a 24/7 response company and we can manage to get through a meal together, looking at each other and carrying on a deep, meaningful conversation and not looking at our phones. And I think you owe it to each other to give the best of your attention to each other. And even your kids, if you have kids, they rely on you to have a strong, healthy relationship more than anything. So I just don't want anybody to use that 24/7 business as as an excuse to disrespect each other, and giving that attention to something else. And I think anytime you do have an issue, it's so important to communicate right then and talk through it to get to the bottom of it. Don't take it into work the next day. Don't, everybody depends on you. And I tell everybody this in the interview process. I depend on you to come to work on time with a smile on your face and do the best you can every day. I expect that of myself. I expect that of Josh. And so we have to set the example. So when we do have an up or down or a high low, we work through it and we do the work. Marriage takes work for it to be worthwhile. And I see a lot of couples going in very different directions in today's world. And it, I think it's concerning. I think there's a prioritization over our friends than there is over our marriages. And I see a lot of like revenge spending, like so and so is going out to do this girls or boys trip. So, I get to go do this now. And so like you're spending and spending money and time in separate directions. And so like I just think like first and foremost, your family unit is number one. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm on a high horse here, but I know that if we're not really careful about this, then hundreds and hundreds of people will suffer. And I take that responsibility. Tim, that's something that you drilled into my head that it's not just me and Josh. It's not just the people who work here. It's our subcontractors, it's their families, it's our vendors and their families, it's our community and all of the organizations that rely on us for support. So there's a lot at stake here. We're not just playing around.
Mhm.
Can I, Michelle, can I interrupt
Yeah,
with a
absolutely.
question here? So, how does that play out with your staff? Is there this philosophy, Katie, with what you said, where the sum of your efforts together is better than, the collective, where as a team, you're putting forth a good example. Can that be emulated with your staff? I guess is what I'm getting at. The priorities of your relationship and the relationship that you have with your business, because that's another separate entity here. And what we're talking about is what are the priorities, but how your staff then responds to that and sees how you and Josh are able to still show up with a smile on your face and do your best every day, even though you got something tough going on at home.
Right, right. And I think you want the same thing for your people. You want them to be able to go to awards day at school. You want to be flexible with them when they need time off to do those things that you want to do for your family too. And you want like your leadership team and your accounting team, your admin team, you want them to have these strong bonds with each other. You want them to rely on each other. And then you want them when they're having an issue to address it directly with that person first. And I think there's a lot to be said about keeping your life private. There's not enough of that anymore. And like your relationship with your spouse is private between the two of you. You don't go and talk about your problems to somebody else. You don't go and pretend everything's great on social media when at home you're a hot mess. So it's like, I think same concept here. Even this morning, we were having a level 10 with our technicians and just doing refreshers on mission and values and interpersonal relationships. And it's like, remember, if you're having some kind of, if someone's not meeting the expectation that we have, take it up with them first. And then if you've got an issue, let's talk about it. So I think relationships across the board are important, but if you have strongly communicated values that you're hiring for, then it naturally happens because people love spending time together because they're with a group of people that value the same things that they value. And, you know, well, at least with us, when we do our employee satisfaction score, you get those open-ended comments and time and time and time again, it's like, I love my coworkers, and they'll call it a work family. But that's what you're creating, is a place that allows relationships to be built and allows people to come to work feeling like someone loves them, cares about them, appreciates them, and respects them.
Absolutely. Okay, anything else to add on this financial lane conversation? I want to talk about success planning a little bit, or succession planning, or future planning, whatever it may be. We've touched on it a little bit, but JT, I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about the advice that you give people, maybe in KDC, where there's still years to come, probably, of running the business, being involved in the business, but you're coaching them along the way. So how do you coach them toward, protecting the family's interests as well as the company, the employees, and also having a vision of the future?
Well, that there can be so many answers to that based
Yeah.
on spouses, based on kids, kids in the business, kids out of the business, kids in the business who don't want to be in the business. There's so many tentacles to that. The entity comes first, the business itself. As Katie said, there's a lot at stake. And so we could make a whole episode out of this, but you got to plan. And people don't plan for the what ifs, and some what ifs in succession planning. What if you've got a spouse who's vital in the business, works all the time, 40, 50 hours a week, and no one else is cross-trained to do that position or job? Well, that's an issue. It can be. How many couples who work 40, 50 hours a week together can take 10 days off or 2 weeks off? Sometimes not even a week. Decades will pass before you can get a week off together. Okay, that's not good for a marriage. What if there's a child in the business who's got some equity, and something happens to that individual? Well, do you now want to be partners with your child's spouse? Okay, that's a real thing. Okay, just had an incident earlier this year where an individual gave 10% to their son, and it was a sizable business. And the son, days later, came in and said, "Oh, thanks for giving me that 10%. I've never really wanted to be here. I'm moving to the East Coast, but I'd like my check now, please." And it was all part of a transfer, of eventual transfer of ownership to him. He didn't want it to begin with. So the son was threatening to bring the dad and mom to court to settle this. And then I got involved, and fortunately it ended up as a good ending. But lots of situations there. Okay, let's say you're a business owner, you've got a GM in place. I've worked with absentee business owners who have a GM in place, and then something devastating happens to that GM. Well, is there a number two? Is there a life insurance policy? Is there a backstop plan in case something happens? And nobody wants to think about what if, because it's
Right.
very uncomfortable to go there. But you need to, because the entity can be damaged so quickly with inadvertent and unintentional actions. So a little bit of planning goes a long ways.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, like we have a notary coming by tomorrow to sign our updated estate plan. And like that is something we had not updated in quite some time. And JT, you're totally right. This started off like a year or two ago with my dad not talking and just some of his friends getting older and then just communicating what he wanted as he gets older. And the point where we both got to with each other was like, when you're gone, I want to celebrate your life and I want to grieve you. I don't want to sort through a mess. And I told y'all earlier, I don't like messes, and when I'm gone, I want the same thing. I don't want anyone to try to pick up the pieces and figure it out. Like I want it very clearly spelled out. And if you own a business, especially JT, what you're saying, I'll add on to that. I've seen some really nasty situations, not in this industry, just with friends of mine where, when a parent owns a business and maybe one kid works in the business, the other kid does not and doesn't have that same work ethic. And then the dad unexpectedly dies. And then both kids end up owning a business. One's working in it, one is not. That's really messy. I have friends who are probably afraid to grow their business and make it really great because of some family dynamics where they feel like they're just working to support a sibling that's not involved. So if you're a business owner, you really should get it spelled out, get all this figured out, get it in writing. I've been really blessed to be part of an alumni board with a school that's known for its trust and wealth management and its law school. And so I've had really good people to help guide me through this process over the last few months. But you need to be thinking about, if worst case scenario here, if something happens to both of us, here's who gets what, and here is who makes these decisions. Here's what you have the flexibility and the freedom to do. But then, like JT's saying, recognizing, wow, if that were to happen, that takes a lot of value out of our business for just the two of us to immediately be gone. And so, we've been thinking, all right, what's our plan to basically work ourselves out of a job, and who's going to take those jobs from us, and what does our involvement in the company look like 2 to 3 years from now? And how do we keep taking steps out of it and let great people, really smart people, smarter than us, run it and do wonderful things with it, still be involved, still provide vision. But how do we make sure also that our son is taken care of, but the people who are left behind to clean up everything, how are they taken care of as well? And you can spell those things out in as much detail as you want and really designate who those people are to help you do that.
That sounds really complicated, Katie, and it isn't. It's a series of questions, but there are plenty of people out there who can help with those answers. And once you have that peace of mind and confidence, then it's a matter of executing. But once you know what to do, it's a whole lot easier to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready to do a lightning round? Because I think we should, because we're getting kind of close on time here, and that'll make it fun. So, okay, Tim, I'll toss this one to you first, I guess. One non-negotiable for couples working together.
One non-negotiable. Communication has to be there, without a doubt.
Katie, what about you?
I feel like we're beating a dead horse here, but know your lane, stay in your lane.
All the car analogies. Okay, JT.
For me, it would be that if you can't work together, if you've tried, then many times I recommend that we get one of you out or reduced to a strategic role, because sometimes at the end of the day, there's nothing left to talk about except work. And that gets really old really quick after decades, I'll say. So many times I recommend getting one person out or significantly reduced.
Yeah.
Okay. JT, how about you get to do this one first? The biggest myth about people running businesses together, about spouses working together. Biggest myth.
That it's all going to be bliss. It's nirvana. Nobody plans for the downsides and the arguments and how to budget. It's never all bliss. And sometimes you have to agree to disagree and pick up the pieces and keep moving.
Not every year is a great year necessarily. All right, Katie, biggest myth?
biggest myth is people think we talk all day long or like about all the things that happen. Like I can go full days at work and not talk to Josh at all. And then other people think I know where he is all day. I'm like, I have no idea. Stop asking. Like I guess I'll have to put a bell on him, I guess. But just because we work together doesn't mean we're talking about work together all the time, especially not at dinner time.
Especially not at dinner time. I like it. Okay, Tim, what about you?
Biggest myth. I think I'm going to go with actually believing that you can completely separate business and home, one from the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Katie, what is your best piece of advice for balancing love and leadership?
Mm.
I think leadership or great leadership is actually rooted in love. And I don't know what
Nice
else I
job.
can say after that.
You stole my
Oh, Tim, how do we follow that?
ChatGPT, write your
I got
answer,
nothing,
Tim.
JT.
Wow.
That was awesome.
We should just end right there with the show.
That's it. Call it a wrap.
That was actually a perfect ending. So, anything that anybody wants to add before we wrap it up? Actually, let's do final pieces of advice. So, Katie, we'll start with you. Final pieces of advice and still some wisdom to the listeners here on
Yeah.
you're working with a spouse and this is really freaking hard sometimes. So, some
Okay,
wisdom.
this is relevant for us. So I'm going to say pressure test your company at least once a year. We've never, ever, we got married during hurricane season before we worked in this industry. And so we've never really done a lot to go away and celebrate our anniversary together. So this year during hurricane season, we'll be gone for a while. So I think get away and pressure test it, even if you're scared to, and then come back and recap and see what went well and what you need to work on.
Okay, JT, final advice.
I think to be able to communicate and express unmet expectations, that is the root of so many disagreements in business and personal lives. If you can express unmet expectations and get them on the table without just having it get riled up to a disagreement or argument, it's going to take care of so many evils in both your personal relationship and business.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Tim.
I'm going to say lean in, lean in with everything you've got, both personally and professionally. Just like work, marriage is work, so you have to put forth the effort. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. So you might as well lean into it with 100% in both lanes. So I'm going to go with.
All right. Well, this is a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot myself. So thank you, Katie, for being here. Thank you, Tim and
Thank
JT.
you.
And for those who are listening, you can find all of these episodes on the CNR website, on our YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms, all of those places. And I look forward to seeing people on the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye.